right, I'm subbing for Leo. He doesn't feel too good, so he asked me if I would do that for him, so I would. Person he asked, I've heard him several times. He's a good AA member. He's a good Decator, Indiana home group member, which is Tuesday night. Uh, Without further ado, I'm going to give my friend Steve B. from Decatur, Indiana.
Hello everyone, my name is Steve B. and I am from Decatur, Indiana at this time. I'll turn this a little bit so I can see everybody.
Don't walk off the way, Steve.
Huh?
Don't walk off.
Okay, I'm not going to lean that hard on it anyway. Sober February 16, 2002, coming up on 22 years. It's been a blessing, more than I ever thought possible in my life. Things have changed so much, and I'll get to tell you a little bit about that as the night progresses. I'm just glad I'm here tonight. You know, Alcoholics Anonymous has done, as it says, has done more for me than I could ever have done for myself. And I'm blessed because of that. I was actually one of 7 children born in Decatur, Indiana. My dad was born in Continental, Ohio, and when he was in World War II, he was stationed in South Norwalk, Connecticut for a little while, and that's where he met my mother. And he took her hostage and brought her back to Decatur, Indiana after he got out of the service. That's what she says, and what she used to say. And he kept her barefoot and pregnant. My dad was an alcoholic. We lived in a very abusive alcoholic home. Now he's the only one that could really say that whether he was a true alcoholic or not. It was tough. It was a tough childhood. You know, I grew up feeling like I was less than. I grew up feeling like I was not good enough. I grew up feeling like I was on the wrong side of the tracks. And I grew up feeling like I couldn't live up to my older 2 brothers and my older 2 sisters before me, who were extremely intelligent human beings, and they did very well in school. I hated school. I hated being at school. I just hated it, you know. And everything that happened good in their lives turned against me, you know. And the teacher said, well, why can't you be like your older brother Stu or your older brother John, you know. And it's like, because I'm not John and I'm not Stu. I'm not my sister Pat and my sister Carol, you know. So it was a tough upbringing. As far as I'm concerned, and for me, I was an alcoholic waiting to happen. Okay, at age 15 was the first opportunity I had to get drunk. I drank many times before that. A sip of beer here, a sip of beer there, sneak 1 beer here, 1 beer there. But I never had a chance to get enough where I got drunk. And I got so drunk that night that I blacked out, and I did some stupid things like I always do when I drink. One of my brother's friends almost beat the hell out of me because I couldn't keep my hands off of his girlfriend. And it was just an awful experience. But I couldn't wait to do it again. Okay? Not because I wanted to mess around with somebody's other girlfriend. I wanted to drink again. Okay, just to clarify. Okay. I didn't have many opportunities to do a lot of drinking during my high school career, but I graduated in 1974 from Crestview High School. I'm sorry, it's not my fault. I didn't move there. My dad did. When I was My dad and mom moved me there when I was 6 years old. Otherwise, I would have been a homegrown Hoosier all the way through. But I was a displaced Hoosier for about 12 years, and I graduated from high school, and I never went back. Uh, that summer I graduated, I went out to Connecticut and I stayed with my brother John, my oldest brother John. His wife was pregnant with their third child. They had two little girls. And my sister-in-law was having trouble with her pregnancy. And back in 1974, there was no such thing as neonatal. It was just coming around. My nephew was born at 6.5 months. He weighed 2 pounds and 2 ounces. And he was the first baby to survive at that weight at Yale Clinic in Connecticut. And I remember when they brought him home, I put him in the palm of my hand. His feet were right here, and the top of his head was right there, and he weighed about 4.5 pounds. He was a little guy for a while. Now he's as big as me, and doing very well for himself. He lives out in Washington State, and it's been a tremendous journey for him. I spent the entire summer out there with my brother John. When I came back to this area again, I immediately went over and got a job over at Concord Mobile Homes in Decator, Indiana. I learned how to be a hardcore drinker from my brother John. Okay, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday the party was on. Okay, he worked hard and he played hard, and I kept up with him. At 18 years old, you know, I did my best to keep up with him, you know, and uh, by the time the summer ended, I was pretty much a daily drinker. Okay, it progressed really fast. When I got back to Decatur and I started down there at Concord, I hooked up with the people that drank the way I wanted to drink, and I also hooked up with the people who like to use other substances. And the races were off, man. I'm telling you what. And I worked about 3 weeks at Concord, and I got drunk the night before, and I walked in late, and the boss started jumping down my shit, and I said, "F you," and I walked out the door. And went back to Decatur, walked into Tioga, and got a job there the same day. Try to do that today. It ain't gonna happen. Okay. And I worked there for about 10 months, and then I started at General Electric in 1975, and I retired from there. I'll get into that a little, maybe I'll get back into that a little bit later. I don't know how that ever happened. I really don't. But when I was 20 years old, 2 years later, I met my future wife, and you know, she ended up getting pregnant, and I convinced her that I really wanted to marry her, and we got married, and we had our first child in 1977. And I talked to him today. I swear to God, that boy can talk your ear off. It's amazing. From him hating my guts, he wants my approval today, and he's proud to call himself my son. And it's truly, truly amazing. And at 5 years sober, 10 years sober, he called me on the phone, and it was out of the blue. And at the time, he was having some trouble with his marriage, and that's what I thought he was going to talk to me about. But he said no. He says, "I just want to tell you that I forgive you." I thought, my heart jumped out of my chest. Never thought that would have happened. I treated that boy like hell. And he said, I want you to know that I forgive you. I won't ever forget everything that happened as I was a child, as I was growing up, but I forgive you. I knew that you did the best you could do with the situation the way it was. Okay, there was a lot of drinking going on and off during that period of time. When I started working General Electric, I worked second trip, and that was a party shift. I'd make excuses. I'd go home and pick up a fight with my wife just so I could go out and drink all night. Or I wouldn't show up at all. And it got really bad for the next, we ended up having our second child in 1979. And in 1982, I showed up at the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time. And I came around for about 6 months. Bill T was my sponsor. We never had an opportunity to work the steps because I was too lazy. But he took me to him and Bill and Dave Turner took me to a lot of meetings. I remember at that time that the first time I met Aubrey Tyson. How many people remember that name? Enough people in here that they understand and they know who he was. And I looked at him and I said, "How long I got to go to these damn AA meetings?" He said, "Till you want to." And at that point in time, I didn't understand that, but I do now because I want to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous today. And I've wanted to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous for a long, long time. I stayed sober for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months after that 6-month period. I came home one night after a meeting and my wife told me, she says, "I just wish you'd start drinking again. At least you were home more often. Those guys take you to meetings all the time. I never see you." I told her, "Be careful what you wish for." But I did not drink except for one time during that 6-year period. But I ended up going on what I call my marijuana maintenance program for about 5 years of that. Because I started using that after about a year from the first time I came in. And I thought, well, I'm not drinking. It's okay. It's not okay. Because I was just as much of an asshole when I was smoking dope as I was when I was drinking. Because that's the way I used it. You know, I would smoke until I'd pass out, just like I did when I drank. And the only time that I drank, I ended up spending the night in the Chattanooga jail down in Tennessee. I was coming back on a Greyhound bus, and I was 650 miles away from home thinking, when I started, 650 miles away from home thinking it'd be okay if I'd have a couple drinks of that bottle of whiskey. Just a couple drinks. Well, me and 2 other guys split a bottle, and they took a drink, handed the bottle to me, and they went to sleep. And guess who drank that whole bottle of whiskey? And when I got to Chattanooga Greyhound bus station, 2 police officers walked on the bus and escorted me off and told me they were taking me to jail. That's where I needed to be. You know, and it was tough because I had to call my wife from jail. You know, they got that collect call thing. Will you accept charges from Chattanooga County Jail for Steve Bird? I heard her say no. Yeah. And from nobody knowing, that's where I learned that God has a sense of humor. You know, from nobody knowing that I took that drink, everybody in Decatur knew within the next 24 hours that I went out drinking that night. It was awful. We split up for about 6 months over that one. Okay, so it was on again, off again. I got laid off from General Electric during the next 7, 8 years, quite a few times. So there was periods of time where I couldn't drink because I didn't have the money to drink. But I always wanted to. You know, I always wanted more. I wanted more marijuana, more of this, more of that. Okay. In 1989, we got pregnant with our 3rd child. She had 2 miscarriages between my son Jason and my son Travis. There was an 11-year gap there. and her body couldn't take it. She was very ill during that pregnancy. And at 6.5 months, Travis was born. He weighed 6.5 pounds. He was a pretty good sized baby boy, but during the pregnancy, contracted gestational diabetes, which made the baby grow a little faster than it normally would. But he was born with underdeveloped lungs. And I'm going to stop it for a second and tell you guys congratulations. You got a beautiful baby there.
Thanks.
You know, when Travis was born, they took him directly down to the neonatal up there at Parkview Hospital. And one of the very biggest spiritual experiences I had at that point in time, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing anything during that period of time. And when they got him all set up, they took me in there, and he was in an area that was a little bit shorter than this table, about half an inch wide, an incubator and a bed, and about everything you could think of was hooked up to that little boy. And when I walked in there, they made me put on the cap and a gown and all that other stuff, gloves, and they pulled the chair up beside the thing, and I reached in. I said, "Is it okay if I touch him?" She says, "Yeah, you can touch his foot. It's okay." So I reached in and I touched his foot, and I felt a hand on my right shoulder, and I heard Jesus say, "Travis is going to be okay. I got plans for him." And I believe that with all my heart. You know, 29 days later, we took him home. And Travis is another one of those miracles in my life, and he's as big as me. A couple of inches shorter, but he's just as big as I am. You can tell the Dyson Rob blood comes from my mother, and her family was big. My dad was only 5'7", 5'8". He's just a little guy. But don't let that fool you. He was a mean Navy man. Okay? Penny was in the hospital for 17 days, and Travis was in the hospital for 29. The hardest part was bringing her home, and he was still there, you know, because they wouldn't let her stay with him at night. And I get up every morning, take her there, go to work, get off of work, go to there, spend 8, 10 hours or 5 or 6 hours there during the night, and then bring her home, get up and do it all over again for about 2 weeks. And it was hard. It was hard. The day after Penny, they did a C-section. The day after Travis was born, Penny went into congestive heart failure. She started to retain fluid. Her kidneys were starting to shut down on her, and we almost lost her. And they were able to get her under control, and things were okay for a while. And then during the next year, 7 times she was in the hospital with congestive heart failure. She already had the symptoms of congestive heart failure, but with the kidney disorder that she contracted, it just made things a lot worse. So in 1991, let's see, 21 days after Travis turned a year old, she passed away. She was at St. Joe Hospital, and I was up there. I walked into the room, was in there about 2 minutes. She looked awful. She was so weak. And she sat straight up in bed, and she looked at her mother, and then she looked at me. She says, I can't do this anymore. And she laid back down and had a massive coronary. And at 30 years old, she passed away. One of the hardest things I've ever witnessed in my life. It was tough. It was tough. Okay. I remember they rushed us out of the room, and I went across the room, and they had the big, thick hospital doors. And I was so angry at God, I almost put my fist through the door. I hit it so hard. I never heard from the hospital that they needed me to fix it, so they just let that one go. Uh, it was hard. About a half hour after she passed away, the pastor from our church, the church guy down there, Pastor Mitchell, showed up, and he tried to console us, and it wasn't working very well. And it was time for him to leave, and he said, "Can I say a prayer?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead." All right. And he started to pray. I was holding his hand, and I was holding my mother-in-law's hand, and I felt the hand on my right shoulder. And Jesus said, "I took her home, Steve, so she don't have to suffer anymore. She's okay now." And it was like a peace came over me that I just can't describe, you know. And during the next 2 weeks, going through all of the funeral arrangements and everything that was going on, I was so busy that I'd never had a chance to really stop and grieve. Okay? And it was hard. It was hard. Charlie was 12 years old, Jason was 11, and Travis was a year old. I had 3 boys. I had no idea what I was going to do. None at all. 2.5 weeks after Penny passed away, I walked into a place called Brandy's in Fort Wayne. Okay? And I sat down, and the waitress came up to me and says, "What can I get you?" I hadn't had a drink in well over 2.5 years. And I said, "Give me a double black velvet and Coke." And thus began a 3.5 year hell. I drank myself into bankruptcy. I drank myself into almost losing my job at General Electric. And I was a lost cause. I just didn't care. I didn't care. Now, even though I believed that God took her home, I was still alone. I was still feeling sorry for myself. How could you do this to me? I don't deserve this. Cry me another river, another beer, another shot, another joint, another line of Coke. It didn't matter. That 3.5 years was a blur. My boss called me into work. I was on third trip. She called me. I went to pick my check up on Friday morning when I got off of work, and she told me that Monday morning to come in on days. That she had heard some things, but she couldn't prove it. But I was done working third trip. Okay. Well, just so happened, one of my first sponsors, Dick Lambert. Anybody remember that name? Uh, he was one of my first sponsors, and he told me, he says, his first wife was my boss at General Electric. So she knew all about Al-Anon. She knew all about AA. And during that period of time, I thought, well, screw y'all. I'm going to tie one more on. I left work that day with $1,000 check in my pocket. And I woke up Sunday at about 10 o'clock in the morning with 20 bucks in my wallet. I don't know if I had a good time or not. I don't remember a lot of it. I know I started out fast. I went to the carryout. I got a case of beer and two bottle of tequila and a bottle of Crown Royal, and I started. And I drank myself into oblivion over and over and over. And I woke up that morning and I got home, and my boys thought I was dead. They didn't know where I was. They had called the police, and there's a bunch of shit that happened. All I wanted to do was sleep. I was so tired, so tired. It was awful. I get up Monday morning to go into work, and I had a hell of a hangover, and I felt awful. And I got to work, and I went in and I talked to my boss, And, well, I didn't talk to her that day. I just started my job. I remember that now. And I got off work and I felt terrible. I got home and there was no lights on. I hadn't paid the electric bill, so I didn't have any electricity. The boys weren't there. I had no idea where they were. Found out later on they were with my mother-in-law. And I called my mom to see if I could get enough money to turn the electricity back on. And of course that made her cry. I made her cry many times during that 3.5-year period. She wasn't very proud of me. I ended up, I remember I walked in the back door and the only thing I could think is I needed a drink. And I opened a can of Budweiser out of the refrigerator and I took a sip and about threw up. And I dumped the rest of it down the drain. And I called my brother John, who'd been in the program for about 20 years at that time. And he convinced me that I needed to go into a treatment program. So I went in that next morning. I called into work and said that I was going down to the EAP rep and I wanted to go into a treatment program. And my boss said, okay, stop in after you get done. So I did. She gave me 2 weeks of vacation for the 2-week outpatient program. Because I hadn't drank in over 24 hours, they wouldn't admit me as an inpatient. So I did an outpatient program for 2 weeks. And she agreed to pay my vacation time so I wouldn't get in trouble. Well, I ended up going through that program and it helped me out a lot. The nurse running that program was one of us, and she taught me a lot of good things. And I went back after that 2 weeks, went back to work, and my boss had me come into the office, and she looked at me. She says, "Are you doing okay?" I said, "Yeah." And she had three yellow slips of paper sitting in front of her, 3 written warnings. And she looked at them and she says, "I'm going to give you one more chance." And she picked them up and she tore all 3 of them up. All 3 of them. And I went to AA for about 2.5 years. And then I met a lady in Fort Wayne, and she monopolized my time. I went to church with her every week, and all of my spare time I spent with her as much as I could. And I stopped going to AA. I stayed sober for 6.5 years, but the last 3 years of that 6.5-year period, I was on the dry drunk for most of it. I was not happy. I was miserable. I was missing something and I had no idea what I was missing. And at 6.5 years, I got into a big fight with her, and I just said, F it all. And I went out with every intention of getting drunk that night. And I tried. I drank 2/5 of Black Velvet and Coke over at another place called Cagney's on the other side of town. And you know where all them are, don't you? And I walked out of that door at 3:30 in the morning and I was sober. I was sober. I was so upset. I wanted to get drunk so bad and I couldn't get drunk. And thus began the next 1.5 years of hell. That was my hell. I drank from the moment I'd come to till I'd pass out, and then I'd come to and I'd pass out, and I'd come to and I'd pass out. And it was just one wicked roller coaster. I'm not going to go in. I'm about done with the drunk log. I just had a feeling I needed to do that tonight. My last drunk, I got arrested on my way home from work, and I spent the night in jail. My son Jason's wife, her father, was a fireman, chief of the fire department in Decatur, and her mother was an EMT. And within 2 minutes after I got pulled over, my two oldest sons knew that I was being arrested because it went over the scanner. And they called Jason and Charlie. By the time they got to where the car was, I was already gone. And they wouldn't let them take the car because they found marijuana in the car, so they confiscated the vehicle. Okay, so I had 5 charges against me for that incident. And I remember that cop. I was driving like a maniac coming down 27 from Fort Wayne, running late because I'm supposed to pick my youngest son up at the Boys and Girls Club. And he was only, I'll have to do the figure on that one. He wasn't very old at the time. And maybe 10 or 11, something like that. I haven't told this part of the story for a while. Okay? And I remember I passed that cop. He had somebody else pulled over. And I thought, phew. So I had peppermint schnapps in one of my water bottles. And I drank about 2/3 of a bottle. Celebrate. I made it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it on time. God has a sense of humor. I put the cap back on it, and I looked up in the mirror, and there that son of a bitch was right behind me. I was probably 4 miles ahead of him by that time, and all of a sudden he was there, and he pulled me over. Son of a gun. Saved my life that day, as far as I'm concerned. He pulled me over, walked up to the vehicle, said, well, when I looked in the mirror, I heard that loud booming voice and a hand on my right shoulder saying, Stephen, this is it. You got to do something about your drinking. That was my higher power again. Okay? And he walked up to the car. He said, you been drinking? I said, yeah. Yeah. Well, we better get you out and do a breath test. I said, okay. So I went to get out of the car, and how many of you know what a one-hitter is?
Oh, I do.
A lot of you. It sat between my legs when I went to get out. It goes tink, tink, tink across the ground. I said, what's this? So, and the box was sitting right beside me. So, yeah. And I think it was 20 grams in the glove box. I don't know. But, yeah, they got me good. And when he got me in the car, he had me blow, and it said 4.0 or .40. I believe that was probably pretty close. He says, well, you just took a drink, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I did. Because he saw the little bottle sitting on the seat beside me. And I remember he said, well, we better get you out and do the field sobriety test. Well, I saw the video of the field sobriety test. It was pathetic. Okay? I couldn't do anything. I don't know how I was even standing up. He got me back in the car, and he did another test. It was .17. Blood test at the hospital was .17, and positive for drugs in my system, cocaine and marijuana. So I spent the night in jail. My sister wanted to bail me out that night, but my boys wouldn't let her. They said, no, you leave him in there for the weekend. Let him go in front of the judge. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. So she bailed me out that Saturday morning. I got out of jail. I got home. Well, I went to get my H&R Block had my tax check in, so I went and got my check. I cashed my check. I gave my sister her money back that she bailed me out with, and then I went to get my car. Well, everything was gone in the car except for that little bottle with about that much peppermint schnapps in the bottom of it. Well, during the night that I was in jail, I went through DTs. I was so sick. By the time I got out of there on Saturday morning, my mouth felt like I had 5,000 railroad cars that had been run through it. and it was awful. And I had one hell of a hangover. My sister dropped me off to pick my car up. She took off. I went to take, after I paid the bill, I went to take off, and listen, there was nothing else in the car, so I was going to switch that peppermint schnapps around in my mouth and then spit it back in the bottle because I did not want to drink it. I didn't want to drink it. Well, the guy from the dealer, from the record place, walked out the door just as I was getting ready to spit it out the window. I thought, this is all I need, so I swallowed it. And that was my last drink. That was my last drink. I got home that morning, later on that morning, and there was a note on the table from all three of my boys. Travis was 13 at the time. And my older two boys packed him up and they moved him out. They took him from me. And they left a note saying I was a worthless piece of shit as a father. They didn't want anything to do with me. If I wanted to drink myself to death, to go right ahead and do it. They didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to see me no more. That was it. They were done. And all I could do is sit there and cry. Once I was able to compose myself, I called one of my old friends, John Bonnell. Few people know who that is. And asked him if he would come pick me up and take me to a meeting Saturday night because I didn't have a license because they took it from me. Okay, and he said he would. I remember that little old red Ford truck he had. I squeezed my way in there. He looked at me and he said, "Stephen, you're one of the guys I call a retread. You've been in and out of the program a couple times." So there's one thing that I know for sure. You could recite that book back and forth. I'm not a dummy either. I just didn't live up to my capacity when I was in school. I'm pretty good at figuring shit out. And he said, the biggest thing that you have a problem with is you know everything about the AA program. You just don't know how to live the AA program. And it's time to get busy and live the AA program and become a part of the fellowship. And we didn't. I said okay, and we left. And when we went down to that meeting on Saturday night in Bern, and how many of you have been to the Bern meeting? You know, you walk in the kitchenette right there, you go around the sink, and that's where the room is where they have the meeting. Well, when I walked in that back door, I could see Bill T sitting over there on the other side of the tables. And before I could get to the doorway, he was right there, 77 years old, and he threw his arms around me and he said, "Welcome home, Steve. We missed you." And from that day forward, I've been an active, busy member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love it. I love it. And I understand what Aubrey Tyson was talking about wanting to be here. Because I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love AA. It saved my life. It gave me an opportunity to be able to mend the fences with my 3 sons. It gave me the opportunity to be a part of my 5 grandchildren's life, my 2 great-grandchildren. Somehow, some way, I ended up retiring from General Electric. And every night I went to a meeting, my mother would call me before I'd go, and she said, "You going to your meeting tonight?" And I'd say, "Yeah, Mom. Have a good meeting, son. I'm proud of you." And then I'd get home and she'd call me and she'd say, "Did you have a good meeting tonight, son?" And I'd say, "Yeah, it was a really good meeting, Mom." And she says, "I'm so proud of you." My mother got to see me sober for 5 years before she died. And it was an amazing experience. You know, I got to be able to help take care of her in the last few years of her life. And a lot of things shouldn't have ever happened, and I certainly don't deserve what I have today for the things that I did in the past. But I know and I believe that God says you do deserve this, Steve, because you work hard at it. You stay busy. You stay involved. My sponsor George, he yells at me sometimes because I skip some meetings because I started a new venture in my life. I've been hauling Amish for about the last 11 months, and I love it. I like doing it, and it keeps me really busy. I'm 67 years old, and I retired at age 49 and a half from General Electric.
Holy shit.
I was the youngest person to retire from GE. They had shut down the Taylor Street plant, and they also shut down the transformer plant right there before I retired. And I became eligible to retire with 30 years on February, March 1st of 2006. So I got to retire a little bit early. And gave me an opportunity to do a lot of different things that I never thought I'd get to do. I'll share a couple little tidbits before I'm done here. I got a few minutes. I got to be able to be involved with my youngest son, Travis. He was in band and the Brave Generation Dance Club. And I got to help with tech and build sets and stuff like that because I was retired. I had time to do things. Okay? And I ended up, the first band competition I went to, had an awesome time. It was really fun, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. And I got back in my car to drive home because at the time I was smoking and I didn't want to ride the bus. I wanted to drive. It was up at Kendallville, or DeKalb, okay? And I barely got on 69, got out of there, and it hit me. My son Jason was in band for 4 years, and I never went to a single competition. Not one. I was actively working my program. Okay? And I called him on the way home, and I asked him if I could stop and talk to him. He said, sure. And I took him out to the garage when I got back to Decatur, and I said, I want you to know how sorry I am that I never went to a single competition when you was in band. That I was not a part of any of it. And he said, you know, Dad, he said, you weren't able to do that at that time. He said, but today I know that you're a much better man because hey, you just keep doing what you're doing right now, and everything will be okay. Wise men. I don't know how they came out the way they did. My son Charlie was in the service for 20 years. He retired from the service. He lives in Florida. He works for the post office down in Florida. And he called me today to tell me how he was doing. And we were on the phone for 35 minutes. It was awesome. I texted my son Jason today and wished him a happy birthday. He texted me back and says, thanks, Dad, I love you. Okay? Talked to my son Travis today. He's doing okay. My son Jason is the plant manager at Fleetwood Enterprises in Decatur. He runs all 8 plants. He's a hard-working man. And their lives are blessed. All 3 of them. And I'm blessed because I have them in my life. And I never thought I would ever get them back. You know, AA has given me so many things. And I am forever grateful. And I could go on and on with the wonderful things and the miracles that have happened in my life. I will share one with you today because the Daily Reflections talks, and reading today talks about spiritual experiences and spiritual awakenings. And one that comes to mind that really sticks with me is, I don't know how long ago this was. A friend of mine, an Amish guy that was coming to the meetings in Decatur, was actually out in St. Louis working on a Walmart out there. He was helping in construction. And I don't know why, I can't tell you why, but all of a sudden I had the urge to call him. And I called him, and he picked up. And he said, how did you, I said, put it down. Or, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. He said, what are you talking about? I said, you don't want to do this. He says, how did you know I was just getting ready to walk out the door to go across the street to the liquor store because I've had a bad day? And I said, well, I didn't know that. You don't want to do that. That's a dumbass thing to do. He says, yeah, I know. And our conversation went on for a little bit. And I said, well, when are you coming back to Decatur? He says, I'll be back in about 2 weeks. And I said, well, you stop into the Monday night meeting and see me when you get here. And he came into that meeting, and I saw him walking in the door, and I went up and gave him a big old hug, and I said, good to see you, buddy. How you doing? Well, I'm okay. I'm sober. It was awesome. Okay? That's one of the many miracles that happen in this program. I'm going to read my favorite reading in the daily reflections, and then I'll sit down and shut up, or stand and shut up. I am a miracle, January 1st. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 25. This truly is a fact of my life today and a real miracle. I always believed in God, but could never put that belief meaningfully into my life. Today, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I now trust and rely on God as I understand Him. I am sober today because of that. Learning to trust and rely on God was something I could never have done alone. I now believe in miracles because I am one. If nobody told you today they love you, I do, and I pass.
Good talk there, Steve.
Can you get around the table, baby?
All right, Steve. Just what I take one GD with the Decator.
Okay. It's the thought that counts, buddy.
All right, well, you know, as I always say, don't give up 15 minutes before the miracle.
Right.
And that's what it's about, staying here long enough to enjoy the benefits, you know. And time takes time, you know, and good things happen to us when we stop drinking, you know. Steve's gonna be here after the meeting. We'll just have him close the meeting with our Father, and you can talk to him after the meeting. Steve?
Okay, let's have a moment of silence for those that are still sick and suffering, our friends and our families. Whose Father keeps us sober?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Keep coming back. It works if you work.